The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. Morning, Jamie.
Morning, Allison.
How are you doing this morning?
Okay, well, here I got some news to share. So I have a new monitor,
Okay.
and it is. I went from 23 to 27, and it is so big. I don't know what to do with myself. Like I'm trying. I'm to get everything in the field of vision. So it's kind of it's just different. It's slightly different, and I don't like change, but I do like bigger things. So I do enjoy having a giant monitor. It's great for my gaming and stuff. But this is the first time we're recording an episode, and it is kind of it's a little there is all I'm saying. So I'm wanting to see how like this affects everything, but I think I managed to get the camera in the right place.
But Jamie, it's twice as big as Sweetie's television.
It's true. Dear, I forgot that.
12.5-inch Olympic television for the people that missed this episode.
Yeah, what episode was that?
She said it was
I don't know.
If it was any bigger, it would be too big for the room. 12.5 inches, Olympic television, tube television, built into a walnut cabinet. And the room's like, I think like 20 feet, something like that. So, yeah. Times have
Sweetie
changed.
wouldn't know what to do with herself either with this. So I feel that I feel like some camaraderie, some solidarity there with her. But yes, I totally forgot about that. Oh my gosh. That was a good one. That made me laugh all day.
Yeah.
Link that episode hopefully, or not, or just like make sure you like write that down. I love it when you do that. I love it when we talk about an episode and then you like write it. So I'm like, yes, that episode, because I'll go back and watch some things too. But yes, so I have a giant screen for my computer, and we'll see how that goes and how we feel about it. But yes, so this is episode 98. And what's the title of this episode?
I felt as though I had been pardoned.
That's right. Oh, Miss Starch is gone for a Christmas break.
Yay.
Okay, that's right. So with this episode, we only have one letter today, Allison.
We do. Sweetie sat down and wrote a mega letter. Not the biggest of the biggest mega letters, but still pretty sizable letter. And she's going to note that to her family, of course. Like, get ready, here we go. Because she wants to talk about everything that happened over Christmas. And so this is the Christmas 1951 episode where we get to find out everything that happened. And yeah, I mean, she's going to get into it. I don't have to really discuss. We're all going to hear all the content as it goes along. I think we should just get into a little bit of housekeeping and then we'll dive in, Jamie. So if you could please like, share, and subscribe to the Love Sweetie podcast on YouTube, go ahead and click that bell icon to make sure you're getting notifications when new episodes are available. Just in case you're a newer listener and you're not sure about the schedule, it's every Sunday. So there you go. With regards to our listeners on our audio channels on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the other podcast platforms, if you could please follow, download, whatever it is that you do on the platform of your choice that you're listening to the podcast on. We appreciate that. And if you could leave a review, that helps us build up a more of a listener base. We want to bring more people into hearing Sweetie's stories. So we appreciate all of that. And then, of course, check out our website, www.lovesweetiepodcast.com. There's a full episode listing of all the seasons in there. So if you're wondering about those television episodes, there were at least 3 just about televisions in the 50s. And we encourage you to go back, check out the listings. You'll find them easily. Just you could like Control F or Command F if you're on an iMac, type in television, and you're going to go find some information in there very, very quickly for the podcast. But all that being said, Jamie, it's time to dive into 1952 as Sweetie recaps the end of 1951. 363 North Main Street, Doylestown, Pennsylvania, January 4th, 1952. Dear Mama and Papa, Sisters Clan, Jean and Glenn, Frank's Clan, and Florence's. This will have to be a daybuster, both for me and for you on the receiving end, if I'm to bring you up to date on local items of interest and answer questions and letters. I shall start with news of general interest, as our dinky local newspaper calls it, and if possible, shall try to answer letters singly. On Friday, December 14th, Mr. Murphy arrived from Atlanta, stopping by in Langhorne to pick up his little boy at the school, and then come here. Their plans were to leave here early on the 15th and take an 8:15 plane from Philadelphia, getting them into Atlanta 4 hours later. Miss Darst packed and unpacked, and worried about the likelihood of their never reaching Atlanta. By noon of the 14th, we were having a very heavy snow, and with some foresight, Mr. Murphy checked out chains on his rented You-Drive-It car when he arrived in Philadelphia. He first thought they'd go into Philadelphia and stay at a hotel overnight, rather than risk getting up early enough to drive into the city to get their plane. Then when the airport called to say the planes were grounded, he made reservations on a fine streamliner, and got roomettes for them. A roomette cost considerably more than to fly even, but was almost necessary for Miss Darst. They stayed here for dinner, as I wrote you, and both Mr. Murphy and Kay ate as though they were really starved, and both genuinely enjoyed my efforts. I might as well add that I outdid myself to get a fine party dinner: Swiss steak that I could ill afford, mashed potatoes and gravy, lima beans, mixed salad, celery stalks stuffed with cream cheese, bread, butter, coffee, and for dessert, hot gingerbread with whipped cream. I shudder yet to think what it cost just for Swiss steak, but his compliments were so profuse I felt justified, and to top it all off, Louis, bug-eyed at the heavy table, inquired why there should be so much food, and so I had an out to let Mr. Murphy know that we didn't ordinarily feast like this, what with the price of food, and just gave him a poor mouth, as these Easterners put it, complaining about how hard it is to bend the ends, let alone making ends meet. He and Kay stayed at the hotel here in town. Miss Darst retired early to be up and ready for the trip in the morning. I slaved over the dirty dishes. The next morning was Lou's day off, and so together we got out and shoveled and shoveled and shoveled snow. Remember that being out in the country in our little red house, we hadn't had to shovel snow for 2 years, and now that we have proudly 148.25 feet of frontage, we had to get out and clear every foot of it before the cops come and knock on the door and give you what for not cleaning walks. They didn't do it to us, and I wonder if some of these stories aren't just hearsay or the product of somebody's imagination. Anyway, we were shoveling when Mr. Murphy and Kay came at about 10:30. He had said he was going to carry lunch on the train rather than try to manage Miss Darst and Kay both in the diner, so I had gotten up early to devil eggs and get bananas and apples ready to take along. Again, he was pleased, but he bought wonderful boiled ham, which cost roughly 39 cents a quarter pound here, and bread and butter to make the sandwiches. We fixed a fine lunch for him, and I've not a doubt but it saved him much trouble on the way down. They left here at 11:15 or thereabouts, with many warnings about taking care of the mail, and her annuity check from the Bible Union, and forwarding mail and keeping the house locked. Mr. Murphy had to pick up his reservations by about 2, though the train didn't leave until 4:45 in the afternoon. They seemed to have a fairly easy trip down, what with their exclusive traveling, and arrived there at about noon on Sunday, if my calculations and memory are correct. I do not need to tell you that I felt as though I had been pardoned. I did dishes whenever I felt like it, left coats, etc. laying around until even I felt cluttered, and Louis and I just reveled in all the noise we cared to make. Of course, it was not all just fun. Louis got sick with a cold and fever on Tuesday night the 18th. I decided I'd not fool around this time and started giving him aureomycin you'd just sent, in the package I thought I'd acknowledged, and you wrote me about it, remember? I gave it to him as you directed, diligently and carefully, but he seems to reach a saturation point after 4 or 5 doses and started to vomit it, and so I stopped that and continued with sulfa. By that time his fever had abated, or I'd have initiated my new syringe. He stayed in bed Wednesday the 19th, Thursday the 20th, and Friday the 21st, and I let him dress and be up for a little while on Saturday, rather up for a while and down for a while. But Marguerite and Joe arrived on Saturday night, and so we had to make preparations for the Christmas celebration. Lou's leave had started the 19th at 4:30, and while Louis was sick, and in between doses of medicine, we hired and sanded the floor in the front room, or reception hall as Miss Darce so elegantly calls it. It was a thoroughly new experience, and the old adage, "Fools rush in," surely applies to us. We moved out every stick of furniture, opened windows, closed doors, and chinked them with rugs and rags, and still there was a heavy layer of floor sandings everywhere you looked or put your finger. The floors did come up quite nicely. We had to sand the edges of the random boards quite a bit, for the boards had warped sadly, Jean will remember, and it would have been very foolish to try to put rugs down on them, for the warped edges would just wear the rugs in ridges the entire length of it. It took us some time to do it, but we rented it on a 24-hour basis, and so we had to do the best we could, and then rush to return the sander. We dusted and cleaned the rest of the house as best we could, by Sunday, or rather, Saturday night. Mm-hmm.
So we kind of had an idea that, Miss Darce had gone in the previous letters. So
Yep.
this gives us a lot more detail as to like the whole situation, and goodness. So it seems like the Brower Murphy has a lot of money where he's able to just fly in, fly out, when he rent cars, go to hotels, get roomettes. Like, it seems like they have a decent amount of money where he's just, able to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be the case. I mean, I love his photo on the website. He's the Southern gentleman. He's the quintessential Southern gentleman. I think he inherited probably a good deal. His relationship from like the Ohio part of the family, having been the editors of the newspaper and then selling half of it and moving to Georgia. I think there is some good family money that's moving through, and he's probably he seems like a pretty smart, like on the uptake kind of guy. So I'm sure in his business, he did really, really well. And then of course there's Darst is kind of coming from the old aristocracy. We know she doesn't have too much left, but he's able to make all these moves around. She's talking about the roomette on the streamliner, like this is the option. Well, we can't get the planes out, so we're going to get back this way. Imagine those train rides that used to exist, from like Philadelphia through DC over to Atlanta. And it's still a long trip, but he's willing to make those trips because he's also coming up to get his son back to Atlanta. So Miss Darst is an addition to the trip. If it was just Miss Darst, I don't think he'd be bringing her down to Atlanta, but he has to come up and pick up his son from the school where the son's staying. So they all come over, and he's just a nice gentleman, and I'm sure he had left some of that ham that she was talking about.
I'm sure he did. Oh, I thought about that too. But that also reminded me of when she was traveling with little Louis from Iowa on the train, and Laura prepared something for him, and Jean, like, they prepared little lunches and stuff. And Frank, there was another time when she was traveling, and Frank went and bought them sandwiches and stuff to take on the trip from Chicago to Philadelphia. So she's able to kind of pay that forward with him. And I'm sure that he very much appreciated not having to get his son and Miss Darce to the diner car and then take care of both of them and then wrangle them back trying to get, oh gosh.
Yeah. Too much.
Yeah, I thought that was such a sweet thing that she did. And it's reminded me of like when she had that same kindness when she was traveling.
Yeah.
I do want to point out too, we had learned that they were sanding the floors and trying to redo stuff, but they also they have to shovel. And she talks about her 100. Do you remember when she's talking about Frank's?
Yeah, she was talking about Frank's. That's right. I forgot about that.
They were living. I think they were living in Norwood, or they were. I think they were living in Norwood.
Going back, yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, he's got all this frontage, and they have 148.25 Canada."
Very precise.
almost
Yeah.
as big as my new monitor. So, but yeah, so she has this huge frontage now, and we're learning now when you have like, yes, you have this beautiful, big, gorgeous house, and now you have to take care of it.
In town. In a
Mm,
town. Yeah.
yeah.
Because in the country, I just always laugh at that. In the country, not anymore, but I get it. Like, they could just kind of let the snow lie and, like, whatever. Not in Doylestown. No. Which makes me wonder, whenever it snowed, I mean, you've got poor Uncle Ned in his 80s, you know,
Oh, I
shoveling
guarantee that the
snow.
policemen were not going to talk to Miss Darst about.
No, they weren't coming up to that porch, ringing the bell, and then here comes Miss Darst, you know, in a house that's tarred black, right? Just the whole imagery of this is like, yeah, we're just gonna let that one go. In this point, in this time period in town, because I know we have some Doylestown listeners, this North Main Street area of Doylestown is not developed to the point it is today. Today, it's very busy. There's the supermarkets are right beyond this for the people in town. This is right across from like the Farmhouse Tavern and the Wendy's, and there's sprawl that happens. At this time period, we're going to talk a lot more about this. There's a couple houses, and then it's mostly open space. So it's like the edge of town. If they were in the middle of town in the borough, it would be very different. It'd be like, no, you have to clear off. I bet back then with like Uncle Ned, it was like, it's just like, let's leave him alone. Like, no one's walking through the snowstorm over here. That would be a different case today. It's a totally different scenario. The other part about sanding the floors, about how the floorboards had warped. So that explains why they felt they really needed to sand it, because you've got all these sort of uneven spots,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then they're dealing with that. But the other big thing that is happening in this first part is, again, Lewis is sick.
I know. So we know that he got sick, and because she, like I said, this is kind of just a more detailed account. We know he got sick, but she got a syringe to administer penicillin, because you remember the doctor, it was like $9 for a house call and for him to administer things, and this is just a lot of money for them back then, especially having Christmas coming around and this big new house. And we still don't know what's going on with the little red house in Hatboro. Is it being rented? Do they have good renters? So like, there's a lot of stuff going on with these guys right now.
We should insert here our standard medical disclaimer, because Sweetie's mentioning a whole bunch of medicines. Special disclaimer. The medicines and other medical treatments noted in these historical letters from the 1950s are specific to Sweetie's story and might not be recommended today, or are even more regulated than they were so many years ago. As such, none of the medical information contained within these letters is to be construed as medical advice. Talk to your doctor. Thank you for your attention to this message. Now, back to the show. And there we go. 4 to 5 doses of Aureomycin. And then it's like, well, he started to vomit that, so get out the sulfa, sweetie. And she's like, I've got the syringe. I didn't need to use it.
This poor, it's kind of, I've dealt with sicknesses and stuff, but like, not anything like this. Like, my kids were never always sick. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But like, the medicine that she's administering, like, typically if it's something bad for you, you vomit. So maybe it wasn't that good. Didn't you say Aureomycin isn't even on the...
I can't really find too much reference to Aureomycin online. That seems to have gone by the wayside, or is called something else these days, or is, totally something else. Sulfa, for our newer listeners, we've had a lot of episodes where we've talked about sulfa. It's extremely regulated. People can be allergic to sulfa. There's a lot. I think it's sulfathiazole is the back then, like, the term that they're going to use for it. This was the miracle drug in World War II, and there was high production of sulfa in World War II. This is the drug that, like, famously was said that it saved Winston Churchill when he was sick with pneumonia. So this is the kind of drug meant for that. It's super powerful. And then what probably happened is everybody had a ton of it in stockpiles after World War II, because it was the thing given to all the troops. So of course they're going to market it to the domestic audience. There's going to be an overflowing of this. So it's a very popular medicine at the time. Talk to your grandparents, talk to people from the generation that grew up in the 40s and 50s. I would challenge our generation specifically, if you go up to your grandparents and you say, were you taking a lot of sulfa when you were sick back then? Their eyes are going to come out of their head. They're going to be like, how do you know about that? Because it isn't talked about like that today. But it's such a fascinating story.
It really is. It's like we hear about it so much in the letters, and so like this was something I never learned about. But it's you have to wonder about the long-term effects of taking so much. Clearly, though, if like people are still here, they didn't suffer some kind of, but did they suffer something else, or was this actually a good thing? It's difficult to know. We don't have this kind of data, because it's like
one second. Called The First Miracle Drugs: How the Sulfa Drugs Transformed Medicine. And if this author is still around, I'm going to reach out to him about it because it just comes up way too much. It's not a long read, but it seems to be a pretty technical read. But have to. So this is on my bookshelf as a impending read to go through that content.
We'll get through that, and then I can grab it when I come down for convention, and then we can go over it and we can talk about it. Because it honestly now is more fascinating to me, like seeing how much she gives it to him, how much she takes herself, to see like, did this really have an impact and like what kind of happened? But so Lewis is sick again. No surprise there. And she's like learning. She's like, I don't have my papa, so I am going to figure out how to do this stuff myself. So, we're going to go on Sweetie's new medical journey. That'll be fun. One more thing I definitely wanted to talk about was Allison was telling me, she's like, this letter is a lot more, measured and even, and she's like it's more organized and stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? Because Darst isn't there. This is what Sweetie would be like if Darst wasn't influencing her mood all the time. She's way, like, you can tell she's calm, even, not mad. There's paragraphs in this one. So so this one you can definitely see the tone and the effect that Miss Darst has on Sweetie. And of course, that's a really good outlet for her too, if she's really mad, to write it down and not go and yell at Miss Darst and not go yell at Lewis and not go pick on Lou. Like this is actually probably the healthiest thing that she could do, is write a letter. So but I do like seeing her. It's like, oh, there, okay, good, Sweetie's doing a lot better. So it is nice.
Elizabeth and G-Mom decided that since Marguerite and Joe had to return to New York on Christmas night, there would be too much bustle and confusion to wait until then to have the presents, the turkey dinner, and get them off on their way home, and so we had the big turkey dinner on Sunday, Sister's birthday, the 23rd. We went over at about 3 p.m. Sunday. Lewis looked pale, but felt pretty well, ate a big dinner. Papa, I want to tell you that from his cough, which was so deep and heavy, I've about decided your medicine and my dosing averted pneumonia. Who am I to diagnose it as such? Well, I'm not the one, but I didn't call a doctor this time since I had the medicine. Just started right in with the powerful stuff, and he came along all right. But I've about decided, from his cough, and it is a deep chest cough too, that if I'd delayed, we'd have wound up treating him for pneumonia. What I'm getting at is my thanks and appreciation for your sending that stuff. And we all enjoyed it immensely. They had bought an 18-pound turkey, and Grandmom knew how to take care of it. As usual, they had many kinds of vegetables with sweet and Irish potatoes. Reminded me of the Christmas dinner, when Jean put her 2 tables together and just spread the food. We all ate too much, but even so had 2 more dinners off that turkey. Marguerite and Joe came home with us on Sunday night and stayed until Monday, when Elizabeth brought a wealthy cousin of Bob's mother's over to see the house and took Marguerite and Joe back with them. That was Monday the 24th. We spent most of the day hunting antiques and junk shops looking for bargains, of which there were none. We had tea and a bite to eat when Elizabeth and the lady came, and then when they left about 5 p.m. we got our tree in and started decorating. Oh, I must tell you that we went tree hunting while Louis was sick and he stayed home in bed alone so we could go and pick a nice one. We'd already decided where we wanted to put it and had talked between the two of us about finding a tree with little foliage on one side so that it would sit back against the fireplace cupboard and be seen from two windows instead of just one, and still not take up too much room in the room itself. We found one priced quite high, complained that the foliage on one side was nil, and that it would have to sit back against a wall, and so the dealer cut the price for that reason, and we had a beautiful tree, just what we had decided to get, for less money than many a smaller and less pretty one cost. It touched the ceiling. Louis was thrilled as could be, especially since he helped to trim it for the first time. It was just about done when he had to go to bed, and so then Lou set up the trains, while I finished knitting on a sweater for Elizabeth's littlest girl. We were most sorry to find something wrong with the trains, and couldn't get the engine to run at all. Lou worked until 1:30, took the engine all apart, cleaned and oiled it, and still it wouldn't work, and so we finally just set them on the tracks, and I was elected to tell him something was wrong. I stayed up till 2 knitting on the sweater, and then set the alarm for 5:30 the next morning to get it sewed together and wrapped. I told you that we went to a sale and bought a big knitted suit for $1.75. I'd taken it apart, washed the wool and balled it, knitted Louis a size 10 slip-over sweater. He didn't need it right now, so I made it big enough to wear in a couple of years, and then made 3 small ones for Elizabeth's 3 kids from the rest. I'd started them early enough that I wouldn't have to hurry at the last minute to get them done, but the floor sanding and Louis's being sick knocked my plans into a cocked hat, and so when I finally finished the last one at 9 on Christmas morning, I was ready to chuck them all down the drain. Put a name on each one and crammed them into a big brown paper bag, tied it with a bit of ribbon, and it was gift-wrapped and ready to go. While I was finishing, though, Louis had awakened and came down. Was at the point of tears when I recklessly promised to send the engine into the factory and have it properly fixed, if he wouldn't cry about it. He pulled a stiff upper lip, and I'm stuck now with my promise to send it in. So I shall. He got shoes and boots, as I already wrote to the folks, and a nice warm cap with fur-trimmed ear flaps from us. I'd told him he'd have to get such gifts from us because we had to pay too much for food and warm clothes. We had to buy the essentials. The boots, which are rubber, of course, were trimmed to look like cowboy boots, and he agreed if I'd buy them, he'd not expect more. We also got him socks. He'd outgrown his. The plaster molding set for making little plaster figures. We bought the Cinderella set, and have made the figures. They aren't all 6 painted yet, but they are lots of fun. I enjoy it as much as he does. We got him a color book, a stencil book, a pair of cowboy dungarees, some plastic bubbles, and several little things to go into his sock. I didn't go into it very heavily, for he always gets lots of gifts from the Grahams. He still thought he was pretty lucky, and so I was pleased also. We ate breakfast, but by the time I'd finished with the sweater we had to leave breakfast dishes, and dashed over to Elizabeth's. They had set up their tree and put out their trains, so Louis played with them in lieu of his own and enjoyed himself. We piled all the presents in a pile, and then everyone sat down at the table, and the presents were passed out one at a time, and opened one at a time, so we could enjoy each one and make the pleasantries last longer. I must say, when I saw that pile of gifts, I felt almost ashamed. It seemed like such an extravagance, and yet, as I go over it, most of them were practical things, except, of course, the flood of toys for the kids, and most of them were for Elizabeth's 3. The one thing that I was so tickled over was a new suit for Louis. It is a brownish houndstooth check, a truly beautiful suit, wonderful material, fine tailoring. It is really an expensive suit, and one that I would look at longingly, but never could afford to buy. It was from Marguerite and Joe. She bought it at Macy's, and from what she told me, it was such a buy she could not resist it. The reason for its reduction being that the pants were size 9 and the coat size 8. Somebody had made a sad mistake, and she reaped the benefits from it. I can guess that it was at least a $25 or $30 suit. She didn't say what she paid for it, of course, but intimated that it was cut a great deal in price. I say thank goodness. He has grown so tall that I'm glad to have the larger pants. If he just doesn't outgrow the coat sleeves too fast, he'll be well taken care of for 2 years at least. I shan't go into further detail about the gifts. Mr. Brown gave us each $5. That is, each of us 3. Marguerite and Joe and G-Mom too. Elizabeth and Bob get a trip to Florida in February or March to attend a newspaperman's convention. I got a blouse, 2 slips, and other intimate apparel. Lou got a subscription to Antiques magazine, a book on antiques, and money for new shoes, and other things. Everyone was very pleased, and thought themselves very rich. We took Marguerite and Joe to the train at about 5:30 after having turkey sandwiches and fruitcake, sent to us, by the way, from the Murphys in Georgia, and then we came on home so that Louis could get to bed for further rest and treatment of his cold. He's still coughing some, but seems to be on the mend.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it's a nice Christmas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been there on those Christmases where you're like up super, super late.
Mm-hmm.
But like it's so sad because Louis just got those trains from the Rieselman boys, remember?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And now they don't work.
Now they don't work. They have to get it to work. And it's funny to me, you know that Lou probably spent hours tinkering with the engine. And for our listeners that are new, Lou is an aviation machinist mate. He works on plane engines, and he couldn't figure out what's wrong with this one. So you know that bothered him for sure.
Oh.
And the other thing about Lou is she keeps mentioning Lou's leave starting or ending. So he is a Navy sailor serving at Naval Air Station, NAS Willow Grove. So when he takes leave, he's away from the base for a number of days at a time. So just for our newest listeners, if you're like, where is he taking leave from? Whenever you hear that reference, he's taking time off from his work at NAS Willow Grove at the base. Yeah, but it was a nice Christmas. Otherwise, we again get to the economy of the gifts, about the wool taking apart a suit and being able to basically make sweaters for 4 individuals from it.
It must have been a huge like suit.
Yeah.
So she unraveled.
Trying to visualize it. Yeah.
She unraveled. This is something that's done. People will go buy sweaters and just pull the thread and make new sweaters. And then I don't knit, I crochet. Yeah, so knitters and crocheters, we're like, crocheting's better, knitting's better.
Tatting. I learned to tat. I can't remember now, but I did tat back in the day.
You're like sheets is like the crocheters and knitters are Wawa, and you're like threaders.
Time to
tatting. You're like, I can tat. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, so she's very resourceful. She's very resourceful. So she found something, was able to make matching sweaters. Like, think about that. Matching. So I think she was like a little bit like, oh, I made sweaters. But I'm sure Elizabeth was like, this is really nice. I would be anyway. And we know Marguerite and Joe came to visit, and so they got to stay with them. That's nice. They always kind of do something for Christmas where they're all really together. And Elizabeth just moved to Norristown. So that's only half an hour away from them. How far away is Norristown from New York?
I guess it's about equidistance from here. So if you were to drive from like Doylestown or Norristown, you could probably get to the city within a couple of hours or so, 2 to 3 hours, because of the main roads that lead up. It won't be back roads heading up to the city. But still, about that time, I would think it would be about the same. And you figure holiday traffic is involved. So they're probably spending about 3 hours, getting
But
back.
That's really nice that they were able, because, Joe's been working so much. They haven't been able to see him. So it's nice that Marguerite and Joe were able to come down and spend some time. And then Elizabeth brought a friend, like somebody to come see that house. It's when she's describing it too, and we got to talk about the Christmas tree. They were like, they went in and those two, I just love them.
They're good. They have their plan. They have their strategy. Let's find the one that seems, we're going to put it against a wall where we can argue to cut the cost. Everywhere. Everything's economical.
But yeah, so that was a very nice little Christmas.
It was, yeah. I think pretty calm. Relatively calm. No Darst. It was Darst-free Christmas.
Oh, well, that's the best kind.
But speaking of Darst-free, it's time to bring Miss Darst back.
All right. I'm ready.
The day after Christmas, we received the film from Frank. They arrived safely, but too late for the family gathering. We borrowed the projector from Sally's grandmother and have enjoyed seeing them again. I don't know when Marguerite and Joe will be over again, but may keep them for a while in case they get over soon. On Thursday, the 28th, Lou's birthday, we went over to Norristown again, picked up Elizabeth, and went to the house of the wealthy woman who had just come to see us when Marguerite and Joe were here. She has a little old house, and it is literally filled with antiques of which she is very proud, and was glad to have us come and enjoy them. We also took the movies to show to Elizabeth and G-Mom. They liked them very much, and as I predicted, Elizabeth is working on Bob to buy a camera and projector. Lou returned to work on the 29th, and so we are more or less back into routine since Louis had to go to school on January 2nd. And that day, too, Miss Darst returned. They had bad weather, and their plane was delayed into Washington, D.C., so that they missed their plane from Washington on into Philadelphia, and so arrived here late at night on the 2nd, Wednesday. I could see that Mr. Murphy was about on his last legs when he was here. He told me that Miss Darst was confused by the lights and couldn't recognize even Doylestown when they came in, and was suffering her pseudo-hysteria when they drove in. She was glad to be back, and he was obviously glad she was too. He stayed with Kay at the hotel, and when they left early so that Kay could be at school by 9, he called me and told me some of the things that I could have told him before she left, and said, "If you have trouble, let us know. We know what you're up against." So I wonder if he might not be a little more sympathetic to our troubles from now on. I think she is being extra pleasant and congenial, at least for a while. The kids got on her nerves down there, and she can't get over how well-behaved Louis is, by contrast, of course. Don't anticipate having any trouble out of her for, say, 2 days anyway? Yak, yak. We are going to take down the Christmas tree this afternoon when Louis gets home from school. I promised he could help, but we wanted to leave it up for Miss Darst to see. Guess it is the first time in many, many years that there has been a Christmas tree in this house. We enjoyed it very much, even if the trains didn't work. Now, to go through each one of you personally, we will start with Jean, I guess.
Okay, so before we get into all of the personal notes.
Yep.
So Brower Murphy had a little trouble with Miss Darst. Who could have foreseen that? Not me, not this one.
Yeah, it's I'm glad that he had this experience, that he knows exactly sort of where she is in her mentality and everything, so that he has a clear picture of everything that they're going through. And I wonder how many times, he would visit his aunt before Sweetie's in the picture, because Uncle Ned was around. Was he around a lot, or did he wind up being around much more frequently after Ned's passing? And it's like, oh my gosh, here's this family that can really help. And he's still around like a decent amount of time, considering he has to travel from Atlanta. And, he's trying to help out with his aunt. But yeah, it's a good contrast. And then the surprise that Darst has about being around, this shows how much she has not been around any children for a long time, that she's around the Murphy kids, and it's like, Louis is such a good little boy.
But he is such a good little boy. He is such a good little boy, though. So, I mean, and you're right, she didn't know how good she had it. This was probably good for everybody. Although, that when he got there and, went back onto his plane to go fly back down to Georgia, he felt it. Probably felt just as good as she did when she said goodbye to Miss Darst.
I think so. I mean, yeah, it's family, but everybody knows that feeling of just like, all right, we've had a good time. There have been some ups and downs, and now there's a little peace and quiet, and we can rest.
Well, she doesn't make it easy.
No.
She doesn't make it easy. She definitely makes it harder, I think, than it has to be. So, that's all on her. But, man, I hope I don't act like Miss Darst when I'm 90. But anyway, now, speaking of this wonderfully organized letter,
yeah.
Now we're going to get into the answering of the single letters.
We have enjoyed hearing about your activities, Christmas and such, but even so, can't help but complain you write less and less frequently. I wrote you the film did arrive safely. We are pleased with most of it. Miss Darst thought she was quite stunning in them, and wants to keep them long enough to show to Mr. and Mrs. Murphy when they come up again, probably in February. You said you'd taken some of the Christmas celebration. We still have the borrowed projector, and I'd love to see them if you'd be able to spare them long enough. We received the rings, and they are too small for Lou. I could almost wear one of them, but it is just a little too big to stay on where my hands are warm, let alone when they are cold. I hate to ask Glenn to make more when he has outdone himself on these. Shall send you a pattern as soon as I can get Lou to help make it. Wouldn't mind having one to fit me too. Hint, hint. Want to tell you that 2 years ago, G-Mom dug out the instructions you typed off for knitting that stitch I used in my blue sweater. Couldn't make it work and asked me to show her. I wound up knitting the back of the sweater. She ran out of yarn, and so I bought her the stuff to match for a Christmas present. So she asked me if I'd finish it all for her, but here comes the trouble. Those typewritten instructions have gotten lost, and I fear permanently. If you could send me the book, instead of typing them all again, I'll finish this sweater for her and return it. The sooner the better, for when warmer weather comes, my evening time will have to be spent outdoors, whereas in the cold weather I can sit and knit at night. Would you please? Did you receive the 2 boxes I sent by express at the same time before Christmas? You wrote about Glenn going to the express office after the box was, that 2 tied together. Answer this immediately. Jean, looking on back, I did not send a gift of those slipper socks to Glenn because I didn't know if he'd want them, nor what size to buy for him. I hadn't thought I could afford to send gifts to the entire family, and so did it somewhat undercover, for the folks and for you and sister at least. I would not like Glenn to feel we didn't think enough of him to include him in those gifts, and so would like to get him something even at this late date, if you'd write and tell me something he'd like to have, or if he'd care for the socks. Also want to tell you that I did not forget the note should be renewed, but I don't remember the date to be put on it, and don't have a real note form. If you'd get one and fill it in properly, we'll sign it so the note is renewed. Do this soon, and please do send the knitting book soon. Also, write about the expressed boxes. They were insured for $50. Frank, everyone who has seen the movies thinks that your 3 little Demarys are just as cute as they can be. Of course, I agree wholeheartedly. I'm sure you had a happy time at Christmas at your house. I wonder if you did get trains for F, as a letter to Papa said you were thinking of doing. I've already written that the film arrived safely. I wish, though, that you'd put in some of your own to show also. Florence, your Christmas card was very cute, I thought, but I did especially enjoy receiving your letter. I have a friend who once remarked, "It is a good thing Christmas comes at least once a year. That way we hear from you annually at least." And so without meanness on my part, I say it to you. You did write a nice letter, though, and I'm glad to receive it. It is always interesting to hear about your kids and their progress. I know you'll enjoy the TV set, and so will KM and R. There are many things you'll all enjoy. We still watch ours as avidly as we did when it was brand new. Joe Graham is going to appear again on January 10th in The Big Story. I do not know what his role will be, but he did say it would be a fairly good part, so I give notice to one and all to watch for it. While I think of it, Jean, I can't locate the letter asking if Joe was on Robert Montgomery's show, but he was. It was the show with Boris Karloff, where he, Boris, played the role of the neurotic father. The story where the mother had been killed accidentally by an arrow shot from a little boy's bow. He was the garage owner and didn't have a very big part, but he was in it anyway. Don't wait so long to write again, Florence. Do as I do and write a round robin, even a short one often. Would be fine. Okay, I wanted to pause here real quick.
Yeah.
Just to comment on one thing, and then at the end of this section we'll comment on all the rest of it. I just wanted to make sure people were aware about Boris Karloff, that name. And I know it's a name that many people will recognize, but maybe some won't. So when she's talking about Joe being the actor, to our newer listeners, in New York, on Robert Montgomery's show, and he's appearing in a show with Boris Karloff. Jamie, are you familiar with that actor's name?
Boris Karloff. I have heard that actor's name, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So he's famous because he's the original Frankenstein, the monster.
Oh,
That's Boris Karloff.
So he's doing TV and stuff now.
He is, right.
Or he was doing TV and stuff. Like, was this before or after Frankenstein's? Was after?
This is, I think, before. So Frankenstein was... Okay, Frankenstein, so Son of Frankenstein. When was the first I mean, he's known. Oh, right. He was Imhotep in The Mummy, too. We forget that he was the original Mummy. Because he did so much. He was Imhotep in the original Mummy.
So he's really, so Joe was, this is really cool. And I think that Sweetie has some like pride with Joe. Mm-hmm. She's like, he's in this, he's the garage owner. It's great. Like, I'm like, that is so cool.
Yep. let's see, Frankenstein, let's get the date on the 3 Frankenstein film season. Frankenstein was 1931. It feels like it's not that old, but it is. This is early before Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz, which were both in 39. So 31, Frankenstein, and then he appears again in Bride of Frankenstein in 34 as the monster, and then Son of Frankenstein in 39.
So he
And
reprised his role as Frankenstein in all 3 of these
yeah,
movies?
in all
Okay.
3, yeah.
And
Mhm,
then
so
then he went to TV.
what sticks out in my mind is there's a wonderful recording of Peter and the Wolf, and he's the narrator. And
Mm.
it's still out there, you can still find it. So if you wanna listen to Peter and the Wolf, the narrator is Karloff. There's a great version with him doing it. So you can really easily, if in the car, listen to his voice. It's great that Joe's on set with Boris. So
That's really cool. That's
yeah.
really cool.
Sisters, we enjoyed receiving letters from M.A. and Chris. M.A.'s letter about her sewing and cooking make me feel ancient, and while I'm ashamed, I must ask, is she in high school? Already? It just doesn't seem possible. It just doesn't. And yet, they don't teach home ec in junior high, do they? I sat up on New Year's Eve and watched the celebration on Times Square via TV, and when I thought how time had passed, I nearly needed a cane to get upstairs and to bed. Can it be that M.A. is in high school, and so near to being grown up? She writes quite well, noticed a few of Sister's phrases in the letter, some of my penmanship. Ahem, but I do thank you, Mush, for writing, even if the awakening to the passing of time was rather rude and hard to believe. We did not see Walt Disney's Christmas Day show. Wish we had, for Louis would have enjoyed it immensely. I think her idea for the printed cards to accompany the movies is an excellent idea, and should be put into active practice for us foreigners. I could read some of the lips, though, and my imagination served me fairly well on the rest of these that Jean sent. But the one bad thing about those family movies is that one calls for another. We enjoyed Chris's letter, too, and feel he is quite lucky to receive so many presents for Christmas. And while I mean no offense, rather to tease, I wonder how his 2 pair of slippers fit. I'm glad that Mama and Papa could join the Des Moines families for Christmas morning. I thought of you all while we were opening our presents and felt a sad pain or two that it was not my family with us, but hoped the weather would permit your gathering. I'm glad it did. Sister, what are Romeos that Bill got? You'll have to put that in words of 1 syllable for me. I got Lou the turn lights for the car. Sort of a gift for both of us, and something I've been wanting, and he was well pleased. I was surely pleased with the apron you sent me. Can't think of anything that really would please me as much, considering the sewing we did at your house when Dee was so little, and I can appreciate your efforts thoroughly, too. I took it with me to G-Mom's on Christmas Day thinking I'd wear it to help clean up after the dinner, but couldn't desecrate it, and so borrowed one of Elizabeth's. Perseverance, perseverance. Louis was pleased with the candy cane, hung it on the tree until it grew too heavy for the drooping boughs, and dropped and broke. Now we're all enjoying it. He was quite enthralled with that sock of popcorn, squeezed it and mauled it, till I thought he'd break it and scatter the corn. I got a homesick yen last night, and so just up and popped some. Louis had already gone to bed, and I felt so guilty that I took up a little in a dish and let him eat it in bed. He said he hadn't smelled it, but my conscience bothered me till I gave in, and was glad of it, for he does appreciate little surprises like that. We had planned to pop some at the family gathering, which we thought would be on Christmas Eve, but they didn't get to share it due to the change in plans. I hope you took movies, too, of the Christmas gathering, and if Bill will trust me to return them after 1954, I'd love to see them and show them to the Graham family. Well, that about covers all of you but Mama and Papa. Hope I haven't forgotten to write about something in particular like I did when I sat down to tell Papa I'd received the package of medicine and wrote about every blasted thing but that one.
That's the second time she's mentioned that.
She's upset about that. She's really upset about that.
And you know what I think is that she actually did, because it sounds like, because I was reading through. Okay, so just to kind of clarify what we're talking about, Chester sent a package of medicine to Sweetie, and then apparently got mad at her because she never acknowledged it. But I swear she did, and so now she's like really harping on this. Like she's like, I swear. But yeah, I think she actually did, and I think it was just Chester. So
yeah,
we're just
probably.
gonna go ahead and blame Chester. So I like really how so they're able to take home movies,
Yeah.
which is so
I
fun. And
oof.
there's a couple of questions I had. So obviously there's no sound with
Right.
the home movies. And so
Yeah.
she can kind of read lips and, you can kind of see, like, oh, this is what we were talking about. This was what's going on at that time. And then she refers to herself as a foreigner. Can you please,
Mhm. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I saw this in a future letter too. This is completely just a transliteration of foreigner, but it's like an Appalachian term. So it's a play on the word foreigner because she's
That
from
is
the
so
country.
awesome.
Yeah, and she's like, I'm a foreigner.
She's a foreigner because she's not from there.
Right. Yeah, I looked it up, and it is basically just a transliterated term that is Appalachian in nature. So she's pulling on it. It's that exact spelling too, from what I saw online. Yeah.
This makes me so happy because I love the Appalachian, like the whole region. I loved it. We always like vacation in Tennessee, and I always wanted to live in the mountains. And
Yeah.
so Pennsylvania is actually
Oh yeah.
all in the Appalachian region. Like it's the state. It's the state that's like, boom, this is Appalachia.
Yep.
So I'm also, I guess, a foreigner
I think you
because
are.
I'm from Ohio and I didn't grow up here, but I came here
Mhm.
and married my Appalachian man and had my Appalachian children. So that one kind of like threw me
Yeah.
off. That's hilarious. I'm really glad that you knew that off the top of your head.
No, I looked at it, I was like, I just want to make sure that this isn't something else,
Mhm.
like just of a term from the time period. And no, it's still pretty much, I would guess it's still somewhat in use. But
Foreigner.
yeah, it's just pronunciations, basically fun with pronunciations and
I love that.
specifically the region. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so she's like, you can see in these letters, how her and Jean kind of have that relationship.
Yeah.
But she's really developed a relationship with her older sister.
Yeah, over time, clearly sister is getting closer. And then there is a bit of a drift, I think. It just depends on how much she can really talk to and receive letters from. I think she's getting more letters from sister than obviously than survived. We haven't really seen them. But I think there's more of a correspondence here. There's more of a correspondence with the cousins now that MA is older. She was always the oldest of all of the nieces and nephews. So there's that connection there. And meanwhile, Frank is super busy and she's just like, keep sending pictures of things. And Florence, then we see, has really drifted. Still checking in. She's still trying to make sure she includes Florence. It's harder there because of what happened.
Yeah.
But she comments on it and she's like, no, just at least keep doing this. She's trying to be encouraging. She's like, I get it. So we see a little bit of a divide. But yeah, definitely. That's a great assessment to get out of that, Jamie, is that there's more of a relationship that we see building up here. And I think she connects with sister now much more than she could have when she was younger.
And let's talk about too, real quick. Dit.
Yeah.
She like Lou and Sweetie got a TV, and then Dit, I want a TV.
I need to get
They
it
got
too.
a new house. She's like, I want a new house.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's like, cameras and movies. I want to do that.
Are we not already doing this? Yeah.
I know, right? That's probably what she was like. Excuse me.
Yep, for
How do
sure.
we not have this? Well, they are in the newspaper man's convention.
Yeah, they're gonna
I
go to
hope that's what it's
Florida.
called.
Dit's going to the newspaper man's convention. Dit, let's be clear, is not hanging out in a room of newspaper men talking about business all day. She's going to Florida. And there happens to be a convention her husband will be at.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that's gonna work.
And those kids ain't going with them to Florida.
No way. It's good. Well, G-Mom Graham. You've got G-Mom Graham back here in Norristown.
I know. Every time I hear about her doing stuff, I'm like, she doesn't have the kids with her.
No way. Yeah, no way.
Poor G-Mom Graham. Okay, so we got through the siblings, we got through sister and Jean and Florence and Frank, and so now it's time to talk to Mom and Pop.
Now to answer some of Papa's questions. But first, I want to tell you that I sent a Christmas card and note to Aunt Sarah at this address, 205 Western Avenue, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and after having been shunted from carrier to carrier, it was returned to me. That is the same address I've used for a long time, and I can't understand why it would not be claimed. Can you shed any light on that? Have you heard if she moved or such? I made a list of things I wanted to remember to tell Papa, and see that I've already mentioned the trains being broken, Louis having been sick, I also wrote about receiving Mama's Christmas card, but she didn't say how you both were, and neither did this letter from Papa. I'm glad that Papa could wear the slipper socks. He did say they fit fairly well, and that they were warm and comfortable, but you didn't say actually that you liked them. Well, I did want to send you something to show I think of you and love you too, but also want to say that imagining your reaction is half of the fun. I can very vividly picture in my imagination how you look when you write some of these things, can see the very imp of Satan in your remarks, and can just see the look on your face sometimes. I hope they will keep you warm, and besides, those stocking legs will cover you almost to your bathrobe when you have to answer the door in the middle of the night. Would Mamma like some too for cold evenings when she sits to read? Papa, if they are too big, I'll send you a smaller pair. Write about this. I knew what those enlarging easels were for, but didn't know the correct name for them. The picture of the enlarger I sent was to show you what the enlarging easels were for, not that you didn't know, but because I couldn't intelligently explain them. I'm glad you can use them. They were cheap when you stop to consider what all I got in that box. I didn't know the apple or pear wood negative box was meant for that. Thought really it was to hold small lens until I saw a picture of it in one of those folders. The negative was one that came with the rest of the stuff, none of ours, and I think there may be more in a file in the garage. We'll look again. Also, there should be another file for a different size negative. We'll look about that too. I shouldn't be surprised if Glenn didn't have the right idea about the little motor. I didn't know if it was or was not worth sending, but with your natural resources, was sure you'd have some good ideas, and it didn't weigh much more. I'm sorry I did not tell you the poem was mine own. Who else would be guilty of such? I did it as a joke, actually. Not that Mamma is a drudge, actually, but I did notice that she didn't have that type of pair, and heard Maida talking about hers, and asked if Mamma had one, and so when I saw it in the dime store, just bought it on the spur of the moment. Then when I got home, thought that it was nothing to be considered a gift, and so made up the poem to serve as a joke and some fun. I worry about you both when the cold hits. We see Clint Yule. I don't know how to spell his name, but it sounds like Yule, U-L, and he tells us what weather you're having and what we should expect. And so I just about know what you're having. We had another big storm a couple of days after Miss Darce left that left the roads a sheet of ice for 3 good days. I was thankful that Lou was on vacation and not driving. But we've had some warm days and our snow is gone entirely. Have had a lot of rain, but when the weather is fairly warm, I don't cry about the rain. It is growing colder here now, though, and I believe we're about due to get some cold that you've already got. Anyway, I do hope you're not called out on bitter nights. I don't know when I've suffered through the winter as I have this one, and it hasn't been such a severe winter either. But this old house is so drafty, and besides that I mentally go with Louis to school, and climbing that hill is a cold old job on a winter's day. I let him take his lunch quite often, as it saves him a cold walk, and darn it all, he's still my baby. I was afraid the snap switches were pretty stiff, but you no doubt noticed the little angular pieces of metal that came with them. Lou was wondering if you could not secure one of them to the switch to make it less hard to push. That was my reason for including them, as you probably guessed. I hope to see the one at work with your garage door when I can come to visit you again. And just who knows when that will be. I enjoyed your account of the Christmas gifts, and if I appear green at the thought of that electric blanket for cold nights, be assured it is not so much for myself as for Louis. He kicks the covers off so bad. I'm almost sure that is how he gets colds, as I don't wake up in time to keep from finding him as cold as one of those fish Glenn catches. So we get some good updates here about just general. There's nothing too stunning, I think, with regards to the section here when she's writing to her mother and father. But she notes a couple of things that they're sending. She talks about jokes and poems. We're actually going to be getting in future content some poetry. Sweetie's going to write some poetry in the letters and insert them as little gifts to people. I forget if it's in 52 or 53, but it definitely comes up. So if you're like, wait, did Sweetie write some poetry? You're going to get some Sweetie originals in the future. She couldn't figure out how to spell a name. And I was like, when I first read this letter, I didn't think anything of it. And then when I was narrating it, I was like, oh, this is what she's trying to say. She couldn't figure out how to pronounce this name, but she's like, I think it's this. And ULE is a really weird spelling of a name. And then I was thinking as I was just listening to it right now, and I'm like, I know how to spell that name. It just dawned on me, and I quickly looked it up real quick, and I'm 100% right. So it's a 1950s Chicago weatherman. That's Clint Ewell. And the real spelling is Ewell. And it occurred to me that that is the real spelling. It has nothing to do with the letter U, because there's a famous Ewell that I know of.
Okay. Okay.
So,
See,
mhm,
this is the thing about these letters
mhm,
is,
mhm.
and you have a different experience than I do, but there is some similarities because I'll read it and then we'll talk about it and I'll listen to the narration and I always pick up on things.
There's
Always pick up
it
on things.
happens. Yeah, it just as I'm listening, just this moment I'm like Ewell. It has to be that. And for people who are like that kind of feels weird to just pull out of the air. Not if you're a Civil War historian. General Ewell, Richard Ewell, was a Confederate general at Gettysburg. He was one of the main Confederate generals. And there's a line because Gettysburg's my favorite movie of all time. Like Gone with the Wind for Sweetie, it's Gettysburg for me. I could quote that movie. It's like, well, Ewell's coming over the ridge from Carlisle. And all of a sudden this played in my head as I'm listening. And I'm like, Ewell's coming over the ridge from Carlisle. He's not. But like, I was like, Ewell. It has to be that. So I'm like quickly typing this as the letter is playing. And somebody posted online. They said, does anyone remember Clint Ewell, the weatherman from 1950s in Chicago, as a Facebook post? And I was just like, that's him. That's it.
That's
Hey,
amazing. I love
you
it
read
when
your
these like little tiny
history.
nuggets, these like
Mhm,
absolute beautiful little moments of
mhm.
just organic completely because you're a Civil War historian and
Should have read her
Gettysburg is your
Gettysburg
favorite
account. She would
movie.
have had it. Ewell, Ewell. Yeah.
Well, I really like
Mhm.
that you were able to kind of give us a little bit more context with what she's talking about here because sometimes we don't get the context of certain things because it's common knowledge. It's so
Right.
I'm glad that you were able to find the weatherman from Chicago
Mhm.
from the 19.
All it took was the Civil War. It's the answer to everything. It really is. Anyway, but yeah.
All right, all right, all right. Let's just get our heads out of the clouds there, Missy. All right, but we still have. Ooh, man, we
You're
got
welcome.
like a long section, guys. We got like a little bit more to go.
I can't blame Jean for buying gifts for the family, and I may as well admit that if I had the money to do it, I'd ignore the plan of not sending to all the family. Jean should be commended for giving the gifts, even if she is extravagant. I know of no one who gives more for the pleasure of seeing pleasure on the face of whoever receives the gift. I don't know how anyone who gives more sincerely for the joy of giving than Jean does, and for that reason her gifts mean more to us than many another. And that is a compliment to Jean. Just one thing I'd like to ask. Isn't that blanket cozy? And also, I think that remark you made is also a compliment to her, and you'd probably do her a kindness to repeat it to her personally. You did not comment on Lewis's Christmas card for you. I meant to decipher some of it. The blue car at the bottom is a picture of ours. The white thing at the right-hand side was a candle burning, and I just don't remember what the other one on the left was. I did know the little printing frame was a printing frame. Didn't know what the wood was, but was sure you would. Incidentally, Lou has already expressed the desire for you to identify some of the wood in the antiques we've been buying. Most wood mellows and darkens with age, and we aren't always sure what the wood is, and he is hoping you'll tell him and help him learn what the woods are. I'm looking forward to the pictures you say you'll send. I must say, you put it this way. Pictures I hope to make. Got it in writing now, so hope you'll not be too busy to make them. I wish I had some really good pictures of the family, but you and Mama particularly. Hint. Would like very much to see your wake-up gadget, and hope that Jean will send the movies, so that we'll have an advance preview. I especially want to see some good movies of you and Mama. We do have some vitamin C, and I'm giving Lewis C and B each day in the morning in the hopes that it will help his cold as suggested by the Merck manual. I still have some aureomycin and some sulfa and aspirin. I did not give him a penicillin shot, but believe I could do it. Even thought I would this last time he was sick, but his fever abated and the aureomycin seemed to work pretty fast. I believe if I bargained with him about the money we'd save if I did it instead of calling a doctor, and split the amount saved with him, he'd probably agree to letting me do it, and without as big a ruckus as he'd put up if the doctor did it. He is a very reasonable kid and sensible too, and makes no argument if I say, "No, you can't have that. It is too expensive." He just doesn't tease on as some kids do. I admit that I'd not relish the job, but now that I have the syringe and the penicillin here, I'd do it myself before I'd call a doctor, and I think a little vocal persuasion on my part would probably bring cooperation from Lewis. You should write and tell me how large a dose to give. Do I remember your saying 1 cc? Be sure to answer this. I wondered if the book might not arouse your desire to come and see some of these places around here. And I wondered if the pictures Jean took of the turnpike might not make you want to come and see the mountains and foliage, etc. Mama's card made me feel very pleased, and I'm anticipating your visit. You plan on it too, and between us both, we'll get you here. I've already told you the picture of the enlarger was sent to show you the enlarging easels. Speaking of easels painting, do you need one? Miss Darst has at least one out in the loft of the barn gathering dust, and there should be another one or two in the garret besides. I'm reasonably sure Mr. Murphy won't want them, and we may fall heir to them, or at least buy them very reasonable. So don't buy one until a little more time elapses. Come on and see which one of them you want. Mama's New Year's dinner sounds wonderful. Haven't had cream pie since the last one I ate of hers. Wish I could share it with you. When you come, we'll buy some really fine oysters for you. Yours are mostly small, as I remember, while these are sometimes as big as the palm of my hand. Not all of them are, of course, but much bigger than I remember yours being. We will watch for the wren houses. Have been wanting some now that we have plenty of big trees for them. Shall watch for the box and let you know when it arrives, if I don't forget to tell you. Have written long, and am cold in this unheated room, so we'll stop for now. Thanks to all of you for your respective gifts, etc. Hope you'll all write soon and tell us all the news of your respective families. I enjoy hearing from Mama and Papa and knowing how they are getting along during the winter. Must stop now. Love to each one of you in each family. Sweetie, Lou, and Lewis. Mm-hmm.
Well, I wasn't as exhausted as I was with that last letter that we had.
The last mega, yeah.
The last mega letter we had.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is also due to like the fact that she's a little more calm. Like Darst is there, obviously, but she's being really nice right now.
For now.
Yeah,
for now.
Next 2 days. She's
2 days.
But what I got from this is that Chester and Laura are planning a trip out to Pennsylvania.
They are planning a trip to Pennsylvania.
Yay. So that is not the same as going on a trip to Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is, if they come over to Pennsylvania, they're going to be visiting for a significant amount of time. So it's all just a question of, does it happen? And if so, when? But we're nowhere near that answer yet.
Can I just say personally that upsets me?
Yeah.
That they visit Frank often, have gone out southwest. And I understand too, like, this is probably the best time to visit because she has a place for them to stay. You know, in Norwood and Hatboro, in any of the other places that those are the 2 places they've been, that they had a small house and they would have to accommodate them. So they have a big house now. So I guess this is the perfect time. But that's so sad that they haven't been out to visit.
Yeah. So it's just a question of, when will this happen? Are we going to see it in season 3? I'll say this. Yes, we're going to see this in season 3. But I'm not going to give any hint as to when or how it happens.
So she's clearly doing better. She had a little break. She got everything out. This was like a nice, maybe Miss Darth hadn't woke up yet. I don't know. But I think at the end, she was like, all right, I have to like stop myself.
Yeah. End of mega letter. I'm getting cold. Drafty house. That typewriter's getting a bit worn out that morning. And you know, we talked about this before. I think it took her like a good 4 hours. We saw the checklist she had. She was going through her checkboxes, making sure she wasn't missing anything. Very organized letter. Yeah. But it's a great recap of just December and the closing out of 51 as we head into 1952 here. There's going to be some news items that we're going to be talking about in some of the future episodes. There's some interesting content. There's some heavy content coming up in future episodes in the immediate future. There's some fascinating world news related content coming up in some of the future content for this spring. But next week, Jamie, we have to talk about next week's episode. I've been looking forward to next week's episode. I mentioned it last week, which is we have Miss Darce Bookcase is the next episode, episode 99. We get a little more backstory about Miss Darce and her family. We're gonna chart that out on the family tree, and we're gonna show everybody some more details. So if you're looking for a deep dive into some of what's behind Miss Darst family wise, that's coming next week. And yeah, there's gonna be some reveals in that episode.
99 is gonna be a good one. 100. I'm not even gonna say anything because I just read it last night. I sat down. Actually, this is kind of funny because I was like, I'm gonna go read my stories. That's what I call it. Whenever it's time for me to read it, I go read my story. And I read my story and I was like, I'm done reading my stories.
Yep, time to pause.
Time to pause. I'm not reading them for a while. So, but this was wonderful. She's doing great. Lewis is getting better. So I think, and she finally got her movies. You know, she'd been talking about getting in, so she was able to show people the movies and stuff. Like, this was a very nice little lovely letter.
It was. And it's a great closing of 1951. And with that, well, we'll see everybody next week as we continue in 1952.